The 911 call was never made. For over a week, two-time Oscar winner Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, lay dead in their sprawling Santa Fe mansion, undiscovered. When maintenance workers finally peered through the window, they found a scene of utter stillness. Hackman, 95, slumped near the kitchen, his cane beside him. Betsy, 64, on the bathroom floor, a space heater by her head. One of their dogs was dead nearby. The mystery wasn't just how they died, but why no one noticed for so long. Before we uncover what really happened, tell us in the comments. What do? He was one of the most recognized faces on the planet, the steely-eyed detective, the fearsome villain, the everyman hero. Yet, when Gene Hackman's body was finally discovered, it was clear that the two-time Oscar winner had spent his final days in a state of profound confusion and isolation. The 95-year-old was found slumped near the kitchen in his $3.8 million Santa Fe mansion, his cane lying beside him, his sunglasses nearby. He was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a blue long-sleeve t-shirt, and brown slippers, the clothes of a man who had long ago shed the armor of Hollywood for the quiet comfort of retirement. But the stillness of the scene betrayed a far more disturbing reality. A week earlier, his wife of 34 years, Betsy Arakawa, had already died in the same house. For over 30 years, Hackman and Arakawa had lived a fiercely private life in the high desert of Santa Fe, far from the Hollywood social circuit he had grown to despise. In retirement, he dedicated himself to painting and writing novels, working from handwritten pages that Arakawa would meticulously type and edit. Together, they invested in local businesses and served on museum boards, their shared life a quiet contrast to the noise of the film industry. Yet, behind the walls of their sprawling adobe ranch, a hidden tragedy was quietly unfolding. Hackman had been living with advanced Alzheimer's disease, a diagnosis that would ultimately seal his fate and turn their home into a silent tomb. This was a man who had commanded the screen, but in the end, he couldn't command his own reality to understand that the love of his life was gone. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. For over a week, the Santa Fe mansion sat in eerie stillness. The Oscar winner and his wife lay dead in their sprawling adobe home, undiscovered, while the world remained oblivious to the tragedy unfolding behind closed doors. It was February 26, 2025, when maintenance workers finally arrived at the property. What they saw through the window would haunt them. Betsy Arakawa's body lay on the bathroom floor, a space heater beside her head, pills scattered on the counter nearby. Just feet away, their German Shepherd was found dead in a bathroom closet. Gene Hackman was discovered in a mudroom off the kitchen, slumped on the ground, his walking cane and sunglasses beside him. He was still wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a blue t-shirt, and brown slippers. The scene was deeply unsettling. Arakawa's body showed signs of decomposition and mummification in her hands and feet. Hackman showed similar signs. The couple had been dead for quite a while, authorities later confirmed. But the mystery was just beginning. The circumstances immediately raised red flags. The front door was found open, yet there were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared disturbed, no belongings rummaged. The gas company found no leaks. The fire department detected no carbon monoxide poisoning. What authorities described as suspicious enough launched a full investigation, but the real answer would prove far more tragic than anyone expected. What the maintenance workers couldn't see that day was the silent, heartbreaking timeline. Betsy had been dead for over a week, and Gene, her devoted husband, had been entirely alone with her body the entire time. The 911 call that was never made would become the most haunting detail of all. When authorities finally entered the Santa Fe mansion, they entered a death scene unlike any they had encountered. The actor's legacy had come to rest in a mudroom, his wife had collapsed in the bathroom, and their German Shepherd lay dead in a nearby closet. But until the medical examiner delivered her findings, the truth remained buried. And that truth would reveal two entirely separate tragedies unfolding in the same house, over the same week, from two completely different causes. New Mexico's chief medical investigator, Dr. Heather Jarrell, would piece together a timeline that redefined everything investigators initially believed. Betsy Arakawa had died first. Her cause: hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, an extraordinarily rare and deadly disease transmitted through rodent droppings. This isn't a common illness. In the entire state of New Mexico in 2025, Betsy was the only confirmed case. Between 1975 and 2023, the state had recorded just 129 cases total, with 52 deaths. The odds were impossibly slim. Yet somehow, in the sprawling adobe mansion where the legendary actor had sought peace, a microscopic pathogen had found its way in. The final autopsy report would later reveal a living environment that may have contributed to her infection. Investigators found signs of rodent entry and evidence of rodent feces scattered throughout the property. Hantavirus is not transmitted person to person. It is contracted by breathing in contaminated air from infected rodent urine, droppings, or saliva. Within days of that exposure, Betsy began to feel unwell. On February 11th, she was still active. She visited a farmer's market, a CVS, and a pet food store. She exchanged emails. But by the next morning, she was calling a concierge medical service, desperately seeking help. She made 3 calls to Cloudberry Health, speaking to representatives each time. The symptoms of hantavirus initially mimic the flu: fever, fatigue, muscle aches, and can quickly progress to severe respiratory distress. In that final pulmonary phase, where fluid fills the lungs, death can come within 24 to 48 hours without medical treatment. Betsy was clearly searching for answers, perhaps unaware she was running out of time. She never received the help she needed. Meanwhile, Gene Hackman remained in the house with his wife, unaware of the invisible killer that had taken her life. He was not infected. He tested negative for hantavirus. But his own body was failing in a different, slower way. If this story has surprised you so far, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. The scene inside the Santa Fe mansion had always contained an unspeakable tragedy. But now that the final autopsy reports had been released, the full weight of what had happened became devastatingly clear. Gene Hackman had spent his final week in that sprawling adobe home entirely alone, possibly unaware that his wife had died, unable to care for himself, and slowly starving while his body began to fail. The autopsy confirmed what investigators had long suspected: Hackman's heart disease was severe. He had a history of congestive heart failure, an aortic valve replacement, coronary artery stents, and a bypass graft. His kidneys showed severe changes from chronic high blood pressure. But there was something more haunting. The toxicology report revealed trace amounts of acetone in his system, far above normal levels. The finding, described as consistent with a prolonged level of fasting, meant that Hackman had not eaten for a significant period before his death. He had simply stopped receiving nourishment because the woman who had tirelessly cared for him was gone. But perhaps the most heartbreaking detail came from Hackman's brain. Microscopic examination confirmed advanced Alzheimer's disease. This wasn't just forgetfulness. Dr. Heather Jarrell, New Mexico's chief medical examiner, later stated that Hackman was in a very poor state of health, and that because of his advanced Alzheimer's, it is quite possible that he was not aware that she was deceased. The very condition that had required Arakawa to become his full-time caretaker had robbed him of the ability to understand that she was lying just feet away in the bathroom. According to authorities, Betsy had likely died around February 11th. Hackman's pacemaker recorded cardiac activity until February 17th, with an abnormal heart rhythm on February 18th, which was his last record of heart activity. For roughly 7 days, he had existed in that house with his wife's body, perhaps wandering, waiting, confused, unable to make a phone call or unlock the door for help. The 911 call was never made. The front door was open. But with advanced Alzheimer's, he may not have known what to do. If this story has surprised you so far, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. The man who had once commanded the screen with such ferocity had, in his final days, been utterly powerless. Gene Hackman, the 2-time Oscar winner who had portrayed criminals, detectives, and heroes with equal mastery, had died alone in a state of confusion and neglect, unaware that the woman who had devoted herself to his care was already gone. The official autopsy report painted a devastating picture: severe atherosclerotic and hypertensive cardiovascular disease, advanced Alzheimer's disease, and signs of prolonged fasting. He had not eaten for days. He had simply wandered through the sprawling mansion, waiting for something that would never come. The final chapter of Hackman's life revealed the tragic irony of his legacy. He had spent his Hollywood career playing men in control, men who navigated danger with steely resolve. Yet in reality, the last decade of his life was defined by his need for others, particularly Betsy Arakawa, the woman who had become his full-time caretaker, shielding him from the world while his mind slowly deteriorated. A family friend later described Arakawa as fiercely protective of the actor, managing his health schedule and ensuring his well-being with unwavering devotion. She took very, very good care of him, Hackman's daughter Leslie would later say. That care was the only thing keeping him alive. When Betsy died on February 11th from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, the invisible killer that had somehow entered their home through rodent droppings, the system of care that had sustained Hackman collapsed entirely. The medical examiner later concluded that it was quite possible he was not aware she had died, his advanced Alzheimer's robbing him of the ability to process the scene before him. For 7 days, he existed in that house with her body, unable to call for help, likely unable to understand why she wouldn't wake up. His pacemaker recorded its final abnormal heart rhythm on February 18th, the day authorities believe he finally succumbed to his failing heart. In the wake of their deaths, the world learned the extent of the isolation they had chosen. The couple's Santa Fe mansion, designed together, featured in Architectural Digest and valued at millions, had become a tomb. Environmental surveys later revealed rodent feces and nests across the property's outbuildings, suggesting that the very home Hackman had sought for peace had also harbored the virus that would take his wife. The inside of the house, insiders revealed, was not the pristine showcase of his Hollywood fame, but a chaotic environment reflecting his decline. Dog feces on the floor, dust coating the beautiful furniture, an empty refrigerator. Hackman's will added another layer of complexity to his legacy. He had bequeathed his estimated £62 million estate entirely to Betsy, excluding his 3 children from his first marriage. But since Betsy predeceased him, the question of inheritance remained unresolved, a final, lingering mystery surrounding a man who had always been fiercely private about his personal affairs. The mansion itself, once a sanctuary, was later listed for sale at $6.25 million, a silent marker of what was lost. Gene Hackman had spent a lifetime telling stories on screen, but the story of his final days was one he never could have imagined. A man of immense talent, wealth, and fame, reduced to wandering alone through his own home, waiting for a help that would never arrive. If you enjoyed this documentary, like the video and subscribe for more true celebrity stories every week.